Hi friends, I'm back with another What We Eat in the Week video, and to be honest, this week it was a real struggle to make this video. I had no ideas at all of the meals I could make for my family, let alone meals that would be interesting to show you. This happens from time to time. I'm sure it's happened to you. Let me know in the comments below what you do when you have no inspiration for meals. What I like to do is I like to sit down with my favourite cookbooks. Now the ones I like are Jamie Oliver and Nigella. I love the flavours that they use. I love the fact that they're simple and usually pretty quick to make, so they often give me some really good ideas. I just flick through those cookbooks, see if there's anything that takes my fancy, and then I usually put my own twist on it. So I did manage to come up with 7 meals for the family this week. I'm going to show you 5 of them over the course of the next few evenings. And tonight's meal is going to be sausage and pepper casserole. Now this is a really easy one to make. You just fry the vegetables and the sausages, add some tomatoes and let it slow cook. And I'm going to be making it now. It's early afternoon right now, and I will warm it up later when we're ready to eat. And I'm just going to serve that with some rice, which I'm going to cook with some stock that I have in the fridge. And I'm going to cut up a melon so we get some nice vitamins from some fresh fruit. While I'm chopping up the vegetables, I'm just going to get on and get these sausages frying up. I'm not going to use any oil to fry these sausages because there's plenty of fat in them already. And I just want them slightly browned, not completely cooked through, because then they're going to slow cook in the tomato sauce with the peppers. I'm just going to fry the vegetables in a little bit of oil in this Dutch oven. I'm just going to let these vegetables soften, and then I will add the tomato sauce. The onions and the peppers have softened a little bit in the pan. So now I'm going to make the sauce, and for that I'm adding 2 cans of tomatoes, a heaped teaspoon of garlic granules. Now I would usually use fresh garlic, but I didn't have any today, so ground garlic it is. And I'm going to use 2 teaspoons of smoked paprika. This is one of my favourite spices. I use it in so many different dishes. I think it tastes amazing. And some oregano. Now I'm really proud because this is oregano that I grew myself and dried this summer, so I'm really happy to be able to use this. A good teaspoon of oregano. And I've got half a can of water here that I'm just using to swill out the tomato juice that's still in the can, because we don't want to waste anything. Give that a stir. Now I'm going to add the sausages. You could also cut up the sausages, which would make it easier to stir. I'm going to bring this to the boil and then put it in the oven at about 150 degrees for about an hour. While I'm in the kitchen, I'm just going to get some more bone broth on. These are just bones that I have in the fridge and the freezer that are waiting to be made into broth. So earlier on I said I was going to serve this with rice, but I forgot that I'd planned to serve it with polenta. So in here I've got 2¼ litres of partly stock and partly boiling water. And I'm using stock just to increase the nutrition of the recipe. I'm trying to include as much stock bone broth as I can in every meal. So when we're not having soup, I like to try and cook the pasta or the rice or the polenta in the stock. So that's what's in here, and now I'm going to add the polenta. So the stock and the water are boiling, and I'm going to add the polenta. This is 500 grams, like sprinkling it in so that it gets nicely mixed up. And then I'm going to whisk it until it cooks through. It should take about 5 to 7 minutes, I think. So I'm just going to turn this down and keep whisking. Now you mustn't forget to add plenty of salt to this. And once it's been cooking for about 5 to 7 minutes, you turn the heat off and put the lid on and just let it rest for now. Now you can add a whole load of Parmesan cheese to this to make it taste really delicious. I think that's going to be a bit too much for my boys that are just starting to reintroduce dairy, so everybody will add a little bit of cheese on their own plate. The other thing that's really, really good with polenta is instead of using water and stock, use milk. Now that makes an absolutely amazing side to any chicken dish, sausage dish, tomato dish. It's absolutely delicious. But again, milk is not on the cards for our family right now, so we're going with water and stock. I might add a little bit of cream for those of us that can eat it, but it's going to be delicious anyway. Now this makes a huge amount of polenta, but one of my favourite things to eat is refried polenta. When it's cold the next day, I cut it up into small chunks and I fry it in some butter, and it is absolutely delicious. We live in town and we have a townhouse that doesn't have a garden, but it does have a courtyard. So this year I've been trying to grow vegetables and some flowers in pots in my little courtyard. It has not been hugely successful, I have to say, but something that has grown well is the herbs. So I've been growing oregano, some different herbs to make herbal tea, and also I planted loads of basil because we love pesto, we love the flavour of basil, and I really wanted to have loads to be able to make some pesto to put in the freezer. So today I decided to do a chicken tray bake that would use up some of this basil, but instead of using pesto, as was my original plan, I decided to try out this sweet basil dressing that's over on the blog that came out a couple of weeks ago. I decided to try it as a marinade for some chicken breasts. Now, I have to say it wasn't hugely successful. The flavours were good, but it maybe wasn't quite so flavorful as I would have liked. I think it would have been better to cut way down on the oil and increase the acidity with some more lemon juice in there. So if I were to do this again, I would definitely at least halve the oil and put more vinegar and more lemon in there, and possibly more basil too. So I'm just marinating some chicken breasts, and I'm going to leave those in the fridge for a good half an hour while I get on with some other things. So So as I said in my last video, I'm trying to get as much bone broth and fermented food into my children's diet as possible at the moment. And one of the ideas that I had was to make a big pot of soup a couple of times a week so that we can have just a small bowl of soup with every evening meal. So today when I was at our local organic shop, I saw these huge courgettes and they were on super special offer. They were only a few centimes each, and I thought that they would make a really good base for a soup. So I picked a couple up. I'm going to use one in this soup, and I'm going to use part of the other one with the chicken breasts that are marinating in the fridge. So to make this soup, I'm frying some onions with the courgettes, and I'm just going to fry them gently for a few minutes until they get quite tender. I think this is a really important step to making a good flavorful soup, is to really fry the vegetables before adding the stock, because I find when we add raw vegetables to stock, the flavor can be quite strong, especially with onions, so I always like to fry them first. I add a little bit of garlic, usually too. Let that cook down, and then I will add my homemade bone broth to that. Now, I did make a mistake with this soup. It wasn't very pleasant because I didn't peel the courgette first. So I'm really glad that I did think to peel the courgette for the tray bake that I'm making now. It was so tasty with the peel taken off, but the peel was quite tough. So even when it had been blended into the soup, it still had some bits in it which were not very pleasant to eat. So I shall remember to do that next time I get a big courgette like that. I will peel the skin off. So now I'm onto the tray bake. So I've peeled the skin off the courgette this time, and I'm adding some other vegetables that I had to hand, so some broccoli and some peppers. I realised that there was going to be too much food on this sheet pan, so I'm putting it all into a baking dish, and I'm going to let the vegetables cook down for about half an hour at 200 degrees Celsius before I add the chicken. Now, the other thing that I want to do is make more salads and more raw vegetables in each meal to get loads of vitamins in. So I came across these radishes and beetroot at the organic shop, and they looked so good. I was not disappointed. They were absolutely delicious. If you've not tried raw beetroot before, I really recommend it. It is so sweet and tasty. I absolutely love it. So I'm just making a plate of raw veggies, carrots, beetroot, radish, tomato, cucumber. I'm going to make a salad dressing on the side, and everybody can add the dressing to their own plate. And this was a real treat. We enjoy having a little bit of variety in the vegetables that we eat, and it was so beautiful with all of those colours. Now I'm adding the chicken breast. I cooked this for another 30 minutes, but I do think that that was too long. The chicken was quite tough when we came to eat it. And as I said before, this vinaigrette did not have the desired effect. It did not pack a punch in terms of flavour because of all of the oil that was in there. So it wasn't a huge success, but the idea was good. And I think with a couple of tweaks, that could be a really good meal. It's Wednesday morning and I've got a really busy day ahead of me, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time in the kitchen and get tonight's dinner ready right now. And I'm also going to make dinner for tomorrow so that I can have a lovely tasty meal ready when I get home from work. That's one of my top tips for eating homemade food as much as possible, is when you have time, spend the time in the kitchen. Get things ready in advance. You can always heat things up. It often tastes even better when it's been heated up. So don't hesitate. When you've got some time to spend a bit of time in the kitchen, get a couple of meals ready. Your family will really appreciate it. Now, as I said earlier on, I had trouble thinking of what I was going to be making this week. So I used a couple of cookbooks. And this cookbook I really like. It's called Save with Jamie, and I'm going to be using 2 recipes out of it today. I'm going to be changing them, as I often do, because sometimes I don't have the right ingredients or I know how my family prefers things. But the ideas are coming from the cookbook. So the first one is this mince and onion pie, and I'm not going to be making the pie crust. I'm just going to be serving it with rice later on this evening. And the other one is a chicken stew, and the idea for this chicken stew I really liked. You make the base and then you add pre-cooked chicken, so it goes really fast. So today I'm just going to be making the base, and tomorrow when I get home from work I'm going to add the chicken, and if I have time and energy I will make some dumplings to go in there too. So first things first, I'm going to cut up some onions. I'm just going to slice them instead of chopping them because I like to have lovely slices of onion. I love the flavour and the texture. I'm going to start frying them gently in some oil in my Dutch oven. So I've got 3 large onions in here. I'm going to let them soften before I add the mincemeat. And while they're cooking down, I'm going to get on with the vegetables for the chicken stew. So I'm going to be using another couple of onions, about 6 small carrots. This is going to make 2 meals for us. A few stalks of celery. And here I've got some white sweet potato. So this is a new thing I'm trying with the boys. They haven't had sweet potato in over a year now. So I thought I'd try a little bit of sweet potato in this soup, and I'm hoping that they will be able to try potatoes in a few weeks or maybe a couple of months' time. I'm cutting up the celery quite small because some of the people in my family don't really like it very much, and this is easier for them to eat it, and we still get all of the flavour. And I'm going to keep the tops to make stock. I'm going to cut these carrots up into quite large chunks. I'm going to cut these up quite small because I don't know if you really like them, so small it is for now. And I'm just going to have a look at these onions. They're looking really good, so I'm going to put the meat in there to fry off. This is 1 kilo of meat that I got from my butcher's this morning. And in actual fact, the meat from our butchers, the minced meat from our butchers, is actually cheaper than buying it in the supermarket because they do a special offer every Wednesday. So it's definitely worth looking at your local butchers when they have special offers. It might very well be cheaper than at the supermarket and a lot better quality. So I'm just going to let that brown off nicely. I almost forgot the garlic. I'm going to put a couple of cloves in both dishes. It's not in the recipe, but I love garlic. Now the meat has browned, so I'm going to be adding my seasoning. So I've got my book here to get the seasonings right. 2 teaspoons of English mustard, 2 tablespoons of tomato puree, 4 tablespoons of vinegar. Now the recipe calls for red wine vinegar, but I only have balsamic, so that's what I'm using. I'm going to stir that up. I've been wanting to try something for a while now. I was wondering if I could thicken a sauce with sourdough starter, so I'm going to give it a go. I'll let you know how it goes, if it works or not. This is a sourdough starter that's made with freshly milled flour, so it might have a little bit of a texture in there that maybe not what everybody would prefer. But if you don't have a sourdough starter, then just pop a couple of tablespoons of flour in the mixture, mix it up before you add the stock. So I'm just adding a couple of tablespoons here, and we'll see how it goes. I need to feed my starter, I don't have any left. Stir that up. It's already starting to thicken. And now I'm going to add about 1 litre of bone broth. Now this could be beef stock or chicken stock or really whatever you have to hand. I always prefer to use homemade. It's so much better for you. It's not quite 1 litre there, but I think that will probably be enough. Now I'm just going to let that simmer for, what does the recipe say? Well, the recipe says to put it in the oven as a pie, so I'm going to let it simmer for a good 30 minutes, I think, and that should be delicious later on with some rice. Okay, I've just put my glasses on and I've been reading the recipe and realising that I haven't really followed it at all. This is for the chicken stew. I used this as an inspiration for a meal that I could make this week, but I didn't actually read the recipe properly. But that's fine, it's still going to be delicious. I'm following it very loosely, so he recommends using bacon, which would have been really good, but I don't have any. And also some mushrooms, but I don't have those either, so we're just doing it with what we have and it'll be fine. So I've got all my vegetables here, they're nice and soft. And I'm going to add some arrowroot powder as a thickener now. I would say a couple of tablespoons of arrowroot powder is all it'll need. You don't want it to be too thick. Stir that around. And now I'm going to add this stock. So there's about a litre of stock here, which should be plenty. I'm going to bring that to the boil. If it's too thick, I can always add some more water when I heat it up tomorrow. Now, before I forget, I'm going to add some seasoning to both of these. So a couple of teaspoons of salt. Some black pepper. I'm going to add some oregano to the chicken stew. And a few bay leaves. And I'm just going to let that come to the boil and simmer for 40 minutes. And tomorrow I'll add the chicken and the dumplings. This beef and onion turned out really nicely. It went very well with the rice and the starter thickened it up well too. It would have been better if I'd had a little bit more starter, I think, but it's definitely worth doing again. So it's the next day now and I'm home from work and ready to get this chicken stew and dumplings finished. And I'm making these dumplings by mixing together freshly milled flour, cold butter, baking powder and some sourdough starter. Now I can't remember where I got this recipe from or if I just made it up myself. Unfortunately, I'm recording this several days later, but I'm pretty sure you can find some really good sourdough dumpling methods on the internet. I started by rubbing in the butter to the flour by hand, but I soon realised that after a day of work I had no patience left and I converted to the KitchenAid, which went a lot quicker. So I like to mix together the flour and the butter, the salt and the baking powder before adding the sourdough starter. And I don't add any water when I'm using sourdough starter. I find that that's generally enough to bring the dough together. Now I'm cutting it up into about between 8 and 12 pieces. I just eyeballed it to get the size of the dumplings that I wanted. And then I'm going to roll each dumpling into a ball. I'm just going to leave these on the counter while I finish up the stew, and then I will place them in the stew and put the whole thing in the oven. Now I'm going to get on with finishing the chicken stew. So this is the vegetable base that I made yesterday, and I'm going to bring that to the boil and then add the chicken. I'm using frozen chicken here because I forgot to take it out of the freezer earlier, but it would be better to use defrosted chicken or chicken that you had just taken off the bone yesterday, for example. I'm being extra careful to make sure that I bring that back up to the boil and that the chicken is heated all the way through before I put it in the oven with the dumplings. This was absolutely delicious, and I think it was our favourite meal of the whole week. I'll definitely be making this again. Okay, so it's the end of the week, and would you believe it, I only realised last night that I had no meal planned for this evening. So it's a case of what do I have in the cupboard and what can I use up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a rice bake, which is a recipe that I've got from Half Baked Harvest, and I'm going to use some leftover chicken that I had made earlier in the week, some more chicken that I had in the freezer that's already cooked, and in some onion gravy, so hopefully that'll just add lots of flavour to the bake. I've got some tomatoes here, and I've also got some tomatoes in the garden, so if I don't have enough here I can go and get some outside. And I'm hoping I've got some rice now. Let's see. Well, that's a relief. I've got some rice so I can make this recipe, and I think it should taste really good. I found some prosciutto in the fridge as well, so that's going to add a nice lot of flavour. I don't have bacon. The recipe calls for bacon, which we don't tend to have in the fridge, so I'm just going to use this prosciutto in the end, and hopefully that will give loads of flavour. So the prosciutto is nice and brown. I'm just going to give that a stir, and then I'm going to add the onions and the garlic so that they can brown off as well. In goes one chopped onion. I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit so that the onion doesn't burn. So the onions have softened slightly, and I'm going to add the garlic now. I'm adding a lot of garlic. We love garlic in this house, so you add as much or as little as you like. Give that a stir. And I'm just going to let it fry for about 30 seconds or a minute. Now you have to be careful with garlic because it can go brown really quickly when you're frying it. And I find that when it goes brown it gets a very bitter taste to it, which I don't like at all. So sometimes I won't even fry the garlic first because I like the pungent flavour. But when I do fry it, I'm really careful to fry it on a low heat and for a really short time so that it doesn't go brown. Now I'm going to add this chicken that's already in a sauce. It's come straight out of the freezer because I forgot to get it out any earlier. So I'm going to put it in the pan, let it melt and warm through before I add the rest of the ingredients. While the chicken is heating up, I'm going to prepare these tomatoes. So the recipe calls for cherry tomatoes, which I don't have. So I'm going to cut up some of these tomatoes into chunks, and then I'm going to slice the rest to go on the top of the rice bake. Now my younger boys have recently started eating cheese, which is really good for us, and we're really happy to see them eating a little bit more of a varied diet. but they're not eating a whole lot of cheese. So the recipe calls for cheese in the bake and on top of the bake. So I don't think I'm going to put quite as much as she recommends. I'm just going to sprinkle some over the top, and I'm looking forward to seeing their faces when they realise that they can have this delicious melted cheese. Now that the chicken has heated up, I'm going to add the cubes of tomatoes and the rest of the chicken that I had in my fridge. This is just chicken from earlier on this week that we had left over. I'm going to add a little bit of dried oregano, and I'll add the rest of the seasoning when the rice and the water are in there. Now it's time to add the rice and the water, and I'm a bit worried that my pan is not going to be big enough, but we'll just have to wait and see. So 2 cups of rice, I'll give that a stir. And I'm going to start with 2 cups of water. The recipe calls for 3 cups of water, but that seems like quite a lot to me, so I'm going to see how it goes with just 2 cups, and if I need to add extra, I can do that later. I turn the heat up, bring that to the boil. I'm going to add the seasoning now. A little bit of black pepper. It's starting to come to the boil, so I'm going to reduce the temperature and let it simmer for about 10 minutes. So it looks like I am going to need the extra cup of water. It's sticking on the bottom, so I'm adding the water now. I'm going to let that come back up to the boil, and then I'm going to turn it down to simmer even more gently, I think. And I don't have a lid that's big enough, so I'm just going to use this cake tin. The rice is just about cooked. It's slightly al dente, but it's going to be going in the oven for 10 more minutes, so it'll have plenty of time to cook through. I'm going to add the cheese on the top. And those nice thick slices of tomato. Well, thank you for watching, friends, and don't forget to leave me a comment below to let me know what you do when you're stuck for meal ideas. If you'd like more content like this, you can subscribe to my channel. I make videos every week on homemade food from scratch, allergy-friendly meal ideas, and plenty of sourdough. I'll see you next time. Bye!